After his fight with Pain and subsequent conversation with the man, Naruto is weak and exhausted as he strolls through a forest. When Kakashi catches him and places him on his back, he nearly passes out. Naruto lay on his sensei's back and asked, "Kakashi-sensei?" As he led Naruto back to the village, Kakashi remarked, "You did a good job, Naruto." That is, what remained after Pain's attack. Upon entering, Naruto was greeted by thousands of Konoha residents cheering him on the sight of thousands of people rushing to meet him. Startled Naruto, but before any of the others or his friends could get to him, Root Anbu, who was encircling him in a circle, cut them off. Danzo grinned evilly and said, "Thank you, Naruto, for saving the village. However, I'm afraid you're going to be arrested." As his friends began to feel a little uneasy, Naruto asked, "On what charges and on whose authority?" with a serious yet shocked expression. Danzo grinned broadly as he said, "For treason against Konoha and by the new Hokage's authority," while Naruto and everyone else around him appeared shocked by the news. Kakashi exclaimed, "That's ridiculous. Where is Tsunade?" as he turned to face the Anbu. "As of right now, I'm in charge," Danzo said, gesturing for his forces to capture Naruto. Suad is in a coma after using her chakra to protect everyone. Until Naruto's companions intervened to keep him safe, they weren't going to let him go because he had just saved their lives. Sakura exclaimed, "You want him, you'll have to go through us," while the other members of the Konoha 11 were all in combat stance. They all had fire in their eyes, but Hinata's was much more intense because she had just expressed her feelings to Naruto and wasn't going to let him go. Danzo remarked, "That can be arranged," as the Root Anbu pulled out their swords and prepared to engage in combat before Naruto waved them away. "Cease." When Naruto said, "I'll come quietly, just don't hurt them," his friends gave him startled looks, and Danzo smiled even wider. "What?" The others tried to persuade him, but Naruto shook his head. "No, Naruto-kun, don't," Hinata said. Naruto said, "No, neither of you nor I are in any condition to fight," as he now received sympathetic and irate looks from his friends. "Naruto, should we leave now?" Danzo continued to smile at his triumph, but Naruto only displayed anger. "Yes," Naruto replied as Root Anbu led him away. The entire village fell silent in shock. They hadn't felt this powerless until Pain's attack, and their hero had just been taken away without any apparent reason, so what could any of them do? A worse turn of events was imminent. Unknown location, close to Akatsuki's hiding place. Hubby, Sasuke, and his team are leaving a burning Akatsuki hideout. Sasuke was grinning, and rightfully so, having just removed the Akatsuki. After defeating Itachi and collapsing, he woke up to a man in a mask identifying himself as Madara Uchiha, telling him about the Uchiha massacre, how he had assisted Itachi in it, and how Itachi had done it all to protect Konoha. Sasuke was furious, but not at Konoha, at Madara. He used his newly acquired Mangekyo Sharingan to strike the location with an Amaterasu and light up the entire facility, including all of the members. Even though the victory was sweet, Sasuke now had no motive and considered going back to Konoha, but he could only do so if he had some kind of leverage to get in for the first time. He missed Naruto, Kakashi, and Sakura the most. He would think about it later, but for now, everyone was hungry and chose to pause and eat. As usual, Suigetsu was enjoying his yogurt when Karen became agitated with him. "Oh, their yogurt here is fabulous," he said. Karen said, "Geez, do you ever shut up, Suigetsu," casting Suigetsu an unhappy glance as she. Suigetsu was preoccupied with his meal. "Their beef isn't so bad either," Jugo remarked as he savored his Suigetsu while gazing out. With his words, "We need to think about what we intend to do next," Sasuke attracted the attention of his fellows. "Sasuke, what were you thinking of?" Suigetsu rolled his eyes when Karen, who was now as interested in him as any other fangirl, said that. "I considered going back to Konoha. You can join us if you'd like," Sasuke said, drawing bewildered looks from his teammates. Karen said, "But you're a missing nin from that place, it would be suicide," to which Hubby nodded and gestured in agreement. "I understand, but I believe I know someone within who can assist us. I just need a way to get in touch with him," said Sasuke, who wanted to put the feud behind him and was confident Naruto would assist him if he asked. They were engaged in conversation when two strangers entered and started talking about something that would instantly pique Sasuke's interest. The first stranger said, "You hear that Konoha got attacked by Akatsuki," and Sasuke's eyes widened. "Yes, and the man who saved them all was put in jail," the other stranger said. "I believe his name is Naruto," and Sasuke's turned around and approached these strangers. "Who put him in jail?" Sasuke, who noticed that the strangers were staring at him, asked. "Danzo, the new Hokage, put him in jail. The man claimed that he had betrayed Konoha by committing treason, but he did not specify what was treacherous. Upon seeing that Sasuke was even more shocked, he turned to go, instructing his teammates to follow him. This can't be good, but it might help me a little, Sasuke thought as he and his teammates started to walk towards Konoha. For the sake of himself, his teammates, and his friend who was in prison, he was going to turn the plan that had just come to him into a reality. In Konoha prison, a week later, after a week in prison, Naruto already harbored resentment toward Danzo for this, in addition to the fact that none of his friends could come see him and that he needed to talk to someone. Of all his friends, he oddly wanted to talk to Hinata the most. His ears were ringing from her telling him she loved him, and he was upset that he couldn't talk to her about it. He was beginning to feel the same way, and that was all he could think about, along with returning to Danzo and making amends. As Naruto ate in the cafeteria, he thought to himself, I swear, I'm going to get out of here one way or another. Later that evening, Naruto's cell, Naruto was lying on his bed thinking about what he was going to do when the wall in his cell exploded. He got up and prepared himself, but the people who stepped in weren't going to fight him. The guards entered, and the intruder with Zabuza's sword killed one of them, and his partner, who had a deformed gray hand, struck the other guard. Then a woman with red hair entered, unchained Naruto, and signaled for him to follow her, while the others followed. Naruto couldn't believe it, but he needed to know who had sprung him. Hyuga compound. Currently, over the past week, Hinata had been crying a lot because she was unable to help Naruto and was trying to figure out how to help him. When she heard people running around the compound, she jumped out of bed and went to her father. Father, what's going on? Hinata uttered those words as her father's eyes widened in surprise. His daughter looked at him in shock and wanted to find Naruto, but Hiyashi told her no, Naruto has been sprung from jail by unknown forces, Hiyashi said. However, he is innocent. Hiyashi shook his head in response to Hinata's declaration. He is, but offering to assist him might put him in a challenging situation, Hiyashi said. Just let him go and see where it goes from there. His daughter nodded in agreement, and he returned to her room. As Hinata returned to her sleep, she thought, Naruto-kun, be safe. In the middle of a forest, outside Konoha. Now that the forces pursuing Naruto and his releasers had been defeated, it was time to ask questions. Naruto said, I appreciate the spring, but why is the question I have, with a serious expression on his face as he turned to face the individuals who had freed him. Naruto's mouth dropped when a shadowy figure emerged from the trees and asked, what's so wrong with helping an old friend? Sasuke. As Sasuke walked up to him and offered to give him a fist bump, Naruto said. Indeed, it is shocking, isn't it? Sasuke gave Naruto a fist bump after saying, I heard you were in a jam and thought I'd help out. Naruto gave him a startled look before becoming serious. Don't just do things for charity, please. What are you doing? As Sasuke clarified that he had nothing to do and wished to return to Konoha and lead a typical ninja life, Naruto said. Sasuke declared, I swear it's the truth, and Naruto began to consider what he was being told and began to believe him. Naruto said, I can't really help you being a fugitive, but I've got a plan of how to set this right, and Sasuke and the others gave him a, I'm interested, look. What kind of plan could that be? Sasuke inquired, curious to find out what the most capricious ninja in Konoha had planned. I have friends in other nations, Naruto said. I'm going to gather strength and retake Konoha from Danzo and put this right. Sasuke nodded, and the two started to move toward the moon. After saying, sounds like a plan, Sasuke signaled his teammates to follow, and they started moving. As he walked with his new friends, Naruto thought, this is going to work for the sake of everyone, it has to. There is a new uncertain future on the horizon. After a year of Naruto's escape and Pain's attack, Konoha had been completely rebuilt, but with Danzo in charge, it had become a gloomy place. Tsunade had risen from her coma, but there was nothing she could do. Danzo had appointed her head of the medical corps. Suad detested Danzo, but she would fulfill her duty, not for Danzo's sake, but for Konoha's. Some wanted to protest, but with tens of thousands of rude Anbu who were only loyal to Danzo, what could you say that wouldn't result in your death at their hands? Under Danzo's rule, Konoha took on more dangerous missions than before, most of which ended with teammates returning seriously injured, and even genin were receiving difficult missions and barely able to return the same. All of his friends had tried to go looking for him while they were on missions, but they had failed. Hinata made her group search the hardest and begged Neji to help her when he could. They searched for a while, but Danzo soon discovered what they were doing and told them to stop or they would be exiled or executed. Naruto had not been seen for a year. There were only rumors and purported sightings. His friends and senseis all missed him and wondered where he was and what he was up to. Mission Assignment Center, Konoha. Alright, you will all need to finish your next mission when Sakura, Kiba's team, Shikamaru's team, and Guy's team arrived, Danzo said. Your task is to eliminate some renegade shinobi in the region between here and Suna. Is sending all this force for a few renegade shinobi really necessary? Kiba said. 3 squads was a bit much, but I didn't mind my squad and one other coming. These shinobi are extremely dangerous and all have enormous bounties on their heads, so don't undervalue them. Now go, Danzo said, receiving nods of agreement from the teams before departing. Lord Danzo, do you want us to kill them when they finish their mission? A member of Root Anbu standing beside Danzo asked. Yes, but avoid dressing like an Anbu. Ambush them by acting like regular thugs, Danzo said, receiving a nod from the Anbu. My work will be undone if they defeat you and they see your Anbu. They'll tell the council. After saying, we will not fail you, Lord Danzo, the Root Anbu vanished. You won't, for your own sake, Danzo said, returning to giving groups missions. A campsite. Unknown location. A large man with orange spiky hair and a bird perched on his shoulder said, the birds have informed me that a large group from Konoha are moving out to battle some forces, Sasuke. Jugo. Which squads are there? Sasuke, wearing a standard black cloak with a hood, said. Jugo said, looks like Sakura, Kiba's team, Shikamaru's team, and Guy's team are the ones being sent out, to which Sasuke raised an eyebrow. Isn't that too many for a straightforward Rouge Shinobi mission? Another figure with a big sword on his back said, and Sasuke nodded in agreement. Although their adversaries are formidable, they are not strong enough to require such a large force. All of Sasuke's teammates nodded in agreement as he said, I feel like a trap is being set for them when they are done. So, what is the strategy? A red-haired woman asked as a shadowy figure emerged from the trees behind them. Just follow them and see what happens. Miss Karen, the enigmatic figure, gave clear instructions, saying, we will only get involved if they are in danger. Sasuke and the others exclaimed, got it, Fox, and promptly departed to pursue the Leaf Squads. As he and the other took off, the one who called Fox asked, what are you planning, Danzo? A few hours later, back with the squads, the others were standing, but they were all exhausted. Well, they were a handful, Shoji said, holding a Rouge Shinobi in his expansion jutsu hand. The Shinobi had attempted to ambush them from the beginning, but they were promptly dispersed. Some managed to get shots in, but it didn't change the fact that they were totally outmatched. The town's residents, who were being held there, thanked them and gave them the appropriate compensation. As he walked with Akamaru, Kiba said, yeah, but we still came out on top, feeling exhausted but still able to enjoy the little triumphs. After receiving a nod from Shikamaru, Shino stated, yes, but we still didn't need this many forces. I concur. It still bothers me that Danzo believed that this mission required all of us, Shikamaru said, still perplexed as to why Danzo would do such a thing. Unbeknownst to him, he soon received his response when 10 men brandishing short swords suddenly materialized in front of them, and the team was promptly repelled. With us, what do you want? Sakura inquired as the other prepared for a potential altercation. As his men prepared to attack, the Root Anbu in disguise remarked, let's just say we want to prove how strong we are, and taking down some leaf ninja would do just fine. Shikamaru thought, this isn't good, none of us are in any shape to fight these guys, since he and his friends were exhausted from fighting. A group of shuriken appeared on the ground in front of them and stopped the disguised Root Anbu from charging. 5 strangers wearing black cloaks with hoods emerged from the shadows. One was a big guy with orange spiky hair from the back, another had a sword Sakura knew too well and had white hair, the only female member had red long hair, the 4th member made everyone's jaws drop when it turned out to be Sasuke Uchiha. Causing Sakura's heart to race. The last member had his hood up and a long black jacket with the word, Fox, printed on the back. Who are you all? This has nothing to do with you, the Root Anbu in disguise said, pointing out that the person in the center was wearing a mask similar to Kakashi's, with his hood covering his hair, allowing only his eyes to be seen. Maybe not, but attacking ninja who have just been through a lot of hardship doesn't seem right, does it? The masked person in the center, who saw the Root Anbu shudder at his words but shook off the emotion, said, as for who I am, well, you won't live long enough to remember or care. You dare assassinate him? Oh, how stupid they are, the Anbu leader said, and his men immediately charged in to fight the 5. Sasuke dispatched 2 of them by cutting one's head off his shoulders and then turning to the other and hitting him with a chidori through the chest, blood spattering on the trees. The one with the big sword, called Suigetsu by his teammates, cut down 2 others no problem. Then again, if you had a giant sword, you'd probably kill people easy too. The big dude, called Jugo, bashed two others' skulls in with his enlarged fist. Choji made a mental note to learn that type of enlargement, even if the mon's fist were gray. Karen, the girl with the red hair, kicked one guy in the gut and flipped over his back, wrapped her legs around another guy and flung him into a tree. Got back on her feet and cut the guy's throat with a kunai. The man with a mask pulled out his own katana and cut an anbu in half and then pumped chakra through the sword and sent a chakra slash at the leader. It went through him and he fell to the ground while blood spilled from his chest. Then the five regrouped and turned their attention to the surprised Leaf Shinobi. The masked man revealed the leaders and the men's tattoos, identifying them as Anbu. These men were root Anbu sent by Danzo to eliminate you, he said. However, why send them seeking us? Sakura asked, continuing to gaze at Sasuke while Karen gave her a disapproving glance. The man in the mask said, because you were looking for a man he put away that had escaped, as he turned to face the shocked Leaf Shinobi. How are you aware of that? Sakura inquired, but Hinata interrupted the man before he could respond. Have you seen him? Hinata, who noticed that the man in the mask had blue eyes and was now staring at her, asked. I haven't seen him, but that isn't significant right now. The man in the mask, who now received serious looks from every squad, said, what matters is what you are going to do now that your Hokage just tried to have you killed. What do you suggest? Shikamaru wanted to know exactly what this guy wanted, so he asked. This is what I'm offering you. The masked man, who had some serious thoughts on the matter, said, you can either come with me and do something about it, or you can stay in Konoha and mindlessly follow a tyrant. We're unsure about what to do. This all happened so quickly, Sakura said, and the man in the mask nodded. Exactly what I was thinking. I'll wait until tomorrow, no later, for your response. The masked man turned to depart with his group, but Sakura stopped them. Until then, goodbye, he said. How can we get in touch with you? Sakura, who noticed the man's blue eyes staring at her, inquired. Return to this precise location, the masked man said. I'll be here when you're ready, and then he and his group quickly departed, leaving the Leaf Shinobi to think alone. Shino said, come on, we'd better get back to the village, and the others nodded in agreement as they made their way back. They all wanted answers, so they asked themselves, what are we going to do now? Our heroes are once again given a choice by fate, but what will they do? Although he would never show it, Danzo was extremely disappointed by the squad's arrival. He inquired as to whether the mission was successful, to which they replied that it was, and then returned to his work. As he began to sign documents angrily, Danzo thought, how had they survived? My forces should have crushed them. Konoha restaurant. A short while later, Shikamaru stated, Danzo seemed just a little surprised that we made it back alive, since he was aware that they were all eager to discuss what had transpired in the forest. They were still thinking about what the masked man had said, and they had to decide whether to join him or to pretend they had never seen him. Could they trust a stranger? Could they continue to serve a man who was attempting to kill them? The answer was due tomorrow, and time was running out. As Shino said, well, that confirms what our masked friend said about those guys being rude. The others nodded and made noises in agreement. Yes, but what should we do next? About this man, we know nothing. He might just be taking advantage of us, Kiba said, to which Akamaru responded with a bark of agreement. He was accompanied by Sasuke, a village trader. In an attempt to be tactful, Neji stated, they might both want the village to be destroyed. Sasuke may have undergone positive change. If he didn't care, he wouldn't have saved us, Ino said, hoping Sasuke had changed and returned to the village. Ino gave Choji a stern look and told him to stop talking. Ino, we all know you like Sasuke, but he left the village and nearly killed Sakura's team once, Choji said. I believe we're not getting the point. Will we follow this guy or not? Tenten's question instantly caught everyone's attention. I don't believe we should all meet him. I believe that one of us ought to meet, respond to him, and inform him that we will meet at a later time. Anyone interested? As they were all nodding and attempting to decide who to send, Sakura asked as Hinata spoke. When Hinata said, I'll go to meet him, all of the teammates gave her startled looks. What? Are you certain? How about your clan and father? While everyone else just stared, Kiba asked. Hinata said, I'll explain everything to father, and I'll go whether he wants me to or not, while maintaining a serious expression on her face. Are you certain about this? Sakura inquired, a little concerned about Hinata. I'm sure, Hinata said, glancing at each one. Shikamaru said gravely as the others stood up and departed, okay then, you tell him we're in, and that we'll meet up later. Choji is still savoring his meat platter, though. Unknown campground. A few minutes later, Fox, do you think they'll join us? Sasuke, who was still wearing the hood and Kakashi mask, stood next to the person named Fox and asked. I hope so, Accept or reject, we execute the plan, Fox stated, receiving a nod from Sasuke. Sasuke said, I got ya, though it would be nice to have some other company, as he enjoyed chatting with his former allies. Fox said, yes, but we'll just have to wait and see, before turning to go and possibly sleep. Sasuke turned and wanted to sleep, thinking, oh, the changes tomorrow can bring. Compound Hyuga. A few moments later, although he knew he couldn't stop Hinata from going to meet and join an unidentified man, Hiyashi was not too happy about her choice, so he granted her permission and advised her to rest for the next day. As he returned to his office, Hiyashi thought, I hope this all turns out right. This is Hinata's room at midnight. Aside from almost dying at the hands of pain, this would be the most audacious thing Hinata had ever done. She had tried to fall asleep but was unable. As she fell into a deep sleep, Hinata thought, I wonder if this man knows where Naruto-kun is. He knew we were looking for him, so maybe. The following day, after taking a shower and getting dressed, Hinata packed some supplies because she would not be returning anytime soon. Neji wished her luck and she left, returning to the forest where the masked man had claimed to be, but he had not yet arrived, so she chose to wait. As Hinata waited, she thought, I hope I'm in the right place, and then she heard bushes rattling. Only one attends the meeting. As he circled the Hyuga heiress, the masked man remarked, I guess the others chose not to accompany me. Wearing a white shirt, black pants, sandals, a long black jacket with short sleeves and a hood, a Kakashi mask, and Anbu arm guards, the man appeared to be carrying only a katana on his right hip. No, Hinata maintained a serious but slightly alarmed expression as she watched the man tilt his head to the right. My friends only wanted to send one person to give our answer, then they will meet up later, Hinata said. And you were sent? Very intriguing decision, the man remarked, observing Hinata blush a little at his remarks. I decided to leave, Hinata said. I don't know why I did, I just wanted to for some reason. The man paused and turned to face her. Interesting, but enough of a waste of time. How would you respond? The man, not wanting to mince words any longer, asked. Behind his mask, Hinata could see the man smiling. The answer is yes, we are going to help you with whatever you have planned, Hinata said. Great, I'm glad to hear that, the masked man said. Come with me, I'll show you where we are set up. But Hinata interrupted him by acting as though she had something to say. The man turned around and gave Hinata a blue-eyed look. I actually have a question for you, if you don't mind, she said. The masked man saw Hinata glance at the ground and then back at him. If you feel you have to ask, I will answer if I can, he said. You were aware that we were searching for Naruto-kun when you came to our rescue. I wanted to know if he joined you or if you knew where he was. As Hinata watched the man close and then opened his eyes, she asked. When we arrive at the campsite, we can discuss that. Hinata nodded and followed the masked man as he said, I assure you that you will receive your response. What should I call you, by the way? Since Hinata was unsure of the man's identity and didn't want to simply refer to him as the masked man, she asked. Call me Fox, Ms. Hyuga, Fox said politely, and Hinata gave the man a small smile. Hinata said, nice to meet you, Fox, and Fox nodded. Fox said, same to you, as they headed toward the campsite. The force begins to grow as one person joins and others follow. Before someone informed him that Hinata had left a few hours ago, Danzo was a little suspicious, but he chose to ignore it for the time being because he didn't have time to worry about her and he hoped that wherever she went, she would die. That thought made him happy, but he wasn't smiling at the moment because he needed to discuss something important with the council members right now. Is everyone present? Danzo saw the other person quiet down so he could speak, so he said, good, now listen up. Danzo, what's the point of calling this meeting? Shikaku, who didn't like Danzo as much as the majority of the council members, asked. Well, the topic I've come to talk about has been on my mind for some time. A strike against the villages of the other 5 elemental countries is what I want to discuss, Danzo said, drawing angry looks and outbursts from every council member. Are you insane? We have maintained peace with every country. Why on earth should we attack at this time? Sume Inuzuka asked, and Kuromaru gave him a bark of agreement. I want to establish the village as the most powerful entity in history. Danzo smiled confidently and said, if you're not with me, then get out of my way while my millions, root Anbu, and I take over. When Hamaru said, I'm sorry, Danzo, but I think I speak for everyone when I say we will not be a part of this, but we won't fight you either, the council members all nodded in agreement. Everyone stood up and left the room right away after Danzo said, fine by me, but if any of you tell any of the other countries about this, I will kill you and your entire clan. Danzo, or anyone else for that matter, was unaware that there was a small bird outside that happened to hear everything that was said. It flew to the forest and went to report to a special person. A few minutes later, Konoha 10. No one wanted to go to war because there was already a stable peace going on, and no one wanted to ruin it. The Konoha 10 were not happy at all, and they were now wondering when they were going to meet Hinata and their masked friend. The news of Danzo's plan to invade the other countries had reached them in a heartbeat. It was a crazy plan, even though it was not impossible for him and only his rude Anbu to carry it out that way. Hinata hasn't gotten back to us yet. I'm starting to worry, Ino said, and Choji grabbed him by the shoulder. It's only been a day, so relax. Ino nodded as Choji calmed down, saying, we can't expect her to get a letter here explaining what and where this thing is. How long should we wait, in your opinion? I mean, Danzo is considering going to war at any moment, Kiba remarked, beginning to consider the potential consequences for the village. I doubt it will happen anytime soon. Shikamaru, who was aware that Danzo was somewhat war crazy but not stupid, stated, Danzo is prepared to go to war in terms of manpower, but he still needs to do some reconnaissance and planning before actually striking. Shino, who was certain that it would take some time, said, I agree, it will take some time for him to actually have a battle plan. What do we do during that period? Lee likely wanted to get ready for whatever was about to happen, so he asked. Neji said, we wait for Hinata or the masked man to contact us somehow, and all of the group nodded. Sakura said, I hope it's soon for our sake, eager to start working before Danzo did. The campsite of Fox gave a beard call, and the group that assisted her and the others in that battle arrived. Hinata wasn't sure if Fox was actually taking her to the hideout, but he did. It wasn't much, but it was basic and covered you. There were 5 tents. 6 now that she had arrived, and that was that. Jugo is the large man with the orange hair. Fox said, try not to be violent around him, he gets a little bipolar and could probably kill you. Hinata now appeared extremely frightened, but Jugo chose to reassure her. Jugo saw Hinata wave him away and said, don't worry, Ms. Hyuga, I've got better control of it now. Jugo nodded at Hinata, who said, please just call me Hinata, Jugo. Suigetsu is the man with the enormous sword and short, white hair, as Karen gave him a little, ha, at his expense, and Suigetsu became a little sultry. Fox joked, he's pretty easy to get along with when he's not being annoying. Isn't that the sword that Zabuza Momochi possessed, would it? Asked Hinata, who became a little alarmed when she saw Suigetsu flash his razor-sharp teeth in a wide smile. Yes, it is. The objective is to obtain every blade from the 7 swordsmen of the mist, Suigetsu stated, observing Karen roll her eyes but overlooking it this time. This is Karen, the red-headed person with the glasses. Fox remarked, she is a very talented censor, which makes up for her being a little bit of a pain. As Suigetsu laughed and Karen gave him a furious look. Hey, it's me who has ensured that nobody is constantly observing us, Karen said, you could show me a little respect, but Fox didn't seem to be paying much attention. Fox remarked, and you already know Sasuke, as both Sasuke and Hinata nodded. Hinata smiled amiably at Sasuke, who returned her smile with his trademark arrogant grin. Good to see you again, Sasuke, Hinata said. Sasuke said, same to you, Hinata, and he simply grinned at her. Fox nodded when Jugo said, pardon me, but I think you should hear what my birds have told me. What is happening in Konoha? As Jugo described Danzo's strategy to use his root Anbu to attack every elemental nation, Fox inquired. Suigetsu's smile widened as he said, the guy's gutsy, I'll give him that. Typical, the guy's always been power hungry, Fox said, squinting throughout his speech. With the root Anbu alone? Not the whole force of shinobi? Jugo nodded as Hinata asked. Jugo observed that everyone appeared somewhat less concerned. Yes, the council members wouldn't join him in his quest for power, but they won't get involved either, he said. All right, I was not going to engage in combat with non-root forces, Sasuke said. This just means we can go all out, and Fox nodded. They all nodded in agreement, with the exception of Hinata, who was unaware of the plan. Yes, but also means we have to move forward with the plan in order to stay on schedule, Fox said. Do we need to depart right away? Hinata, who was feeling a little worn out and wanted to ask the Fox a question, said. No, the Fox said, after packing up camp, we'll leave in the morning. Hinata nodded, and the others returned to their tents. Pardon me, Fox, however, you promised to respond to my inquiry regarding Naruto-kun, Hinata said, observing the Fox nod in response and gesturing for her to accompany him to his tent. Fox turned to Hinata and said, I figured you were gonna ask sooner or later, after removing his sword and placing it on the ground. Is he in this force with you? Is he aware that I've arrived? As Fox simply gazed at her with his blue eyes, Hinata asked. Why don't you ask him directly? Fox pulled down his mask and lowered his hood in response to the question. Hinata's face turned a new shade of bright red, nearly making her faint. In front of her was an 18-year-old Naruto, who had the Yondaime's hair and was grinning with such tender eyes. NN Naruto-kun. To make sure this wasn't a dream, Hinata placed one hand on his cheek and rubbed it. As she simply stared back at him in disbelief, Naruto said, "Hey, Hinata-chan," while continuing to smile. Hinata kissed Naruto without even thinking about it, and he kissed her back. They stood in each other's arms for what felt like an eternity before Hinata realized what she had done and jumped back, apologizing, but Naruto told her she didn't have to be at that moment. Hinata returned to Naruto and gave him a tight hug, and he did the same. "I missed you so much, Naruto-kun," Hinata remarked while giving Naruto a hand massage. "Yes, Hinata-chan, I agree." Naruto placed his head on Hinata's and combed her hair, saying, "I'm here now, and nothing is going to tear me from you." The two who had been split up were reunited, but this time they were expressing their love for one another, and nothing could keep them apart. As he now assigned members of Root to spy and gather reconnaissance on the other countries, Danzo had placed the two head council members in charge of assigning missions to shinobi. Danzo was undoubtedly confident in his force's ability to eliminate the elemental countries, and the entire army, which was made up of Anbu, was made to be emotionless to ensure that there was no hesitation over the course of the year. Their numbers increased to the millions. Danzo had been waiting for this day for far too long, and now he was finally getting the chance to do it. "All right, you know what has to be done and what your orders are." As he stood in front of 10 Root in groups of 2, Danzo said, "You are to go out to the countries and gather intelligence so that we can prepare." All 10 said, "Yes, Lord Danzo," and vanished from his view. As he watched all of his forces preparing for the impending attack, Danzo thought, "Very soon, the Leaf Village and, more importantly, I will be the most powerful force in the world." His smile grew wider. Compound Hyuga. Since he had received a message from Hinata regarding the meeting location, Neji dispatched the entire Konoha 10 to gather at the compound, claiming that it was of the utmost importance. He read the message aloud once everyone had arrived. "I have communicated our response to Fox, the masked man, and he is currently determining the best time and location for our meeting. I will send out another message once he has provided more details. Regards, Hinata." "Well, at least we know she's okay, and she met up with this Fox guy," Ino sighed. Shino, who was a little worn out, said, "Yes, and we also know what to call our mysterious friend," referring to Fox as the man in the mask. "So, we must now wait for more information once more." "Terrific," Kiba remarked mockingly, as he sincerely hoped to take action. Tenten struck Kiba on the head and said, "Knock it off, Kiba." Lee said, "In any case, we need to kind of be prepared for whatever's coming," and everyone nodded. "Yes, and who handed you the letter, Neji? Did you get it from Hinata?" Shoji inquired, curious as to how the letter got into Konoha. Neji said, "No, I found it this morning on my front porch," assuming Hinata had sneaked in and planted it. Sakura paused and turned her gaze to the Konoha wall, saying, "I figured, it's not like she could just stay for." Shikamaru, who looked where she did and recognized what she and the others were looking at, said, "What is it, Sakura?" Even though he was far away, they could tell that Fox was staring directly at them as he stood on top of the wall, nodding before disappearing in a cloud of smoke. Shino claimed that he sent a shadow clone to deliver the message, even though everyone had already deduced that. When Neji said, "He's crafty, can't wait to actually be on the same side as him," everyone agreed. Everyone asked themselves, "Who is this guy?" as they went about their day, anticipating the day they would depart. Moments later, Naruto and the others, Naruto said, "The message has been delivered," and Hinata nodded and grinned. Hinata had stayed with Naruto the entire time last night, asking him endless questions about his activities over the past year. Naruto told her that he had used the time to train with Sasuke in Kenjutsu and make his katana, Kitsun-ha, and that he had learned how to control the Kyuubi's chakra from Hachibi Jinchuriki. Hinata was taken aback by all of this and was sure that he would defeat Danzo. Naruto was simply pleased that Hinata was with him on this quest and that she still loved him. The following day, they packed up camp and left, with Sasuke and Taka sent away on an assignment. "Naruto-kun, where are we going exactly?" As Naruto, clad in his mask and hood, gave her a kind glance, Hinata asked. "We are on our way to AIM there. I made a new friend who is eager to assist us. She assured me that AIM would assist me in bringing about peace," Naruto said, receiving a nod from Hinata. Raindrops began to fall as they continued to walk, and within minutes they were looking directly at AIM. They continued into the city and surveyed their surroundings when Naruto noticed a figure above them that made him smile. "Conan, a former Akatsuki member and Pain's ally, descended towards them. Hinata assumed her fighting stance upon seeing her, but Naruto waved her away and told her to calm down. Conan landed in front of Naruto and shook his hand. "Greetings, Naruto. Why have you come to aim?" Conan inquired as to why the boy to whom Nagato had given his dream was present. "I'm assembling a force to fight Danzo." To put it simply, as Conan considered this, Naruto looked at her gravely and said, "I would greatly appreciate your help, as he is gathering Anbu to attack and destroy the other elemental countries." "We can't lose with you." "I agree," Conan said, grinning and shaking Naruto's hand. "Excellent, I'll send a message outlining our meeting location." Before she turned it to sheets of paper and floated away, Naruto nodded to Conan and said, "Until then, gather as much manpower as you can." "Naruto-kun, which other villages will we be visiting?" As Hinata trailed Naruto out of aim, she inquired. Naruto said, "Just Suna and Kumo, Hyonta," as he moved towards Suna. "How are the other villages doing?" "They will undoubtedly join when they learn that Danzo is preparing an attack," Hinata said, observing Naruto nod in agreement. Naruto remarked, "Yes, but I don't need all of these forces, and I also need people I can trust and know," observing Hinata still a little perplexed. "Why don't we at least inform them?" Hinata asked, observing Naruto nod once more. "Yes, I sent Sasuke and his group to accomplish that today. I also asked them to refrain from interfering with the plan so that we wouldn't lose any ground." As Hyonta nodded and expressed amazement at how far in advance he had planned this, Naruto said, "They will meet up with us later." Hinata said, "Okay, Naruto-kun," blushing slightly as she saw Naruto smile at her. "Both sides get ready for battle, but who will win?" Danzo remained at the root base, getting ready for what he believed to be the biggest takeover in ninja history. He smiled when he saw himself standing on top of a flaming heap of village debris. Danzo snapped back to reality when he realized one of his spies had returned and was about to tell him something that might be dangerous. Danzo said, "Report," and the Anbu bowed before continuing. The root Anbu raised an eyebrow at this. "Yes, Lord Danzo, our reconnaissance agents are still in place and haven't been discovered, but there is something that has come up that I think you should hear," the root Anbu said. Danzo asked, looking a little irritated at the prospect of trouble, "What exactly is this news?" The Anbu said, "Well, sir, our men stationed at Kiri and Iwa both claimed to have seen Sasuke and 3 other ninja following him in the vicinity of the area," as Danzo now gave him a startled expression. Danzo wondered why Sasuke would be in those villages and asked, "What have they been doing in those villages?" As Danzo rose from his seat, the Anbu remarked, "We're not sure. All we know is he has asked to speak to the cages and then leaves, though we don't know what about." The Anbu nodded in agreement with Danzo's new directives. "Send a couple of Anbu to follow them and report exactly what they are doing," he said. The Anbu said, "Understood, Lord Danzo," and then abruptly vanished, leaving Danzo in his mind. Danzo went back to his chair and carried on with his conquest strategy, thinking, "Nothing must disturb my takeover." The vicinity of Suna. As they moved forward, Naruto and Hinata could see the gates of Suna. A guard stopped them as soon as they reached the entrance and inquired as to why they were there. Though the guards were unaware of it, Naruto observed them glancing at one another with a hint of suspicion. "Our business is with the case cage. We have a proposition for him that I think you will be interested in," he said. The Suna ninja, who had not heard of anyone coming to see the case cage today, inquired, "Is he expecting you?" The guards became a little more suspicious when Naruto said, "No, but believe me, this is something he'll definitely want to hear." However, Naruto and Hinata refused to back down. "I'm sorry, but unless he is expecting you, I cannot allow you to pass. I'm gonna have to ask you to leave," the guard said. Naruto pulled out his katana and Hinata positioned herself for combat. "Look, we're getting in and seeing the case cage one way or another, if you prefer," Naruto said. "Very well, sir," the guard said, drawing kunai and charging at them with the others. But just as they were within striking range, a wall of sand erupted, preventing them from getting to one another. Gazing up from a floating platform of sand, Naruto and Hinata saw Gaara staring down at them. Gaara lowered himself to the ground and said, "You're looking for me, right?" Naruto's words, "Indeed, long time no see, Gaara," came as he took off his hood and mask to reveal himself. Gaara said, "Naruto. Well, I should have guessed since she was with you," as she glanced at Hinata, who blushed slightly. Gaara nodded and gestured for them to follow him as Naruto said, "I need to talk to you about something. Can we talk in your office?" Alongside Sasuke and his team, following Naruto's instructions, Sasuke and his group were making their way to Suna after delivering their message to Kiri and Iwa. The Anbu were following closely behind them as they walked. Suigetsu moved towards Sasuke as they were strolling together. Suigetsu smiled and asked, "They really think they can sneak up on us?" As the others nodded and vanished, Sasuke remarked, "HMPH, pathetic, let's take care of these guys before we meet Fox." After a moment of shock, Suigetsu sliced one of the Anbu in half and pierced the other with a sword in the back through the chest. Jugo and Karen simply waited and watched to make sure there were no other adversaries. They proceeded on their way after the area was cleared. As he and his group approached Suna, Sasuke thought, if this is all Danzo has, then this battle is going to be one short battle. The Cage Tower. Naruto had told Gaara about Danzo's intentions to conquer the elemental countries and take over the ninja world. He then proposed that Aim join him in the battle and that Gaara join him in stopping Danzo and putting things right. After giving this some thought, Gaara spoke. Gaara shook Naruto's hand and grinned slightly before saying, "I'm your friend, Naruto. Besides, Danzo threatens to destroy a peaceful society. You have Suna and my support in this battle." Naruto asked, "Thank you, Gaara. Oh, by the way, 4 comrades of mine are showing up soon. Will you let them know where Hinata and I are?" Because he wanted the team to spend the night and recuperate. Naruto nodded and walked out of the room with Hinata. "Of course, I'll tell the guards to watch out for them. You can stay in the local hotel here," Gaara said. Hinata, who kind of wanted Naruto to lighten up, said, "We've got some time to kill. Naruto-kun, what do you want to do?" After Hinata nodded, Naruto said, "I don't know. Hinata, you want to walk around and see some sights?" And they started to walk alongside Sasuke. When Sasuke and his group reached Suna's gates, they were taken aback by how voluntarily they were allowed entry. Suigetsu remarked, "Naruto must be inside already," while the others scouted the area for their leader. Jugo said, "Which means we have Suna's support," and everyone grinned at this insight. They simultaneously noticed Naruto and Hinata holding hands. With a smile, Naruto said, "Hey there, about time you guys made it," as his teammates came back. Sasuke saw Naruto smirk and remarked, "Yeah, well, we were being tailed by Danzo's forces, so we had to deal with that. He really thought he could follow you guys? He overestimates his forces," Naruto remarked, taking note of their smiles. As he watched Hinata flush and Naruto wave it away, Sasuke questioned, "But enough about that, are we interrupting something here?" Naruto said, No, me and Hinata were just strolling around. Would you like to join us?" The other person nodded, and the group spent some time exploring Suna before making their way to the hotel. They all went to their hotel rooms and stayed there that night. Suigetsu and Jugo shared a room with 2 beds. Sasuke told Karen that she would likely do better in a different room, despite her desire to be with him. Although they shared a room, Naruto and Hinata had 2 different beds. While Naruto had just crawled into bed, Hinata lay in bed reading a book and asked, "Naruto, what are you going to do when this is over?" Naruto declared, "I guess just go back to my regular life. You know, the only difference is you'll be there with me. At least I hope you will," as Hinata turned to face him in disbelief. Hinata saw Naruto smile at her, get out of bed, and approach her. "Of course I will. Naruto, I'm with you now, and I wouldn't stick around if I didn't love you," Hinata said. Naruto kissed Hinata passionately and she kissed him back. "You're right, sorry Hinata. I guess I was just being a bit down," Naruto said. "I love you," Hinata said as she lay in bed after putting down her book. Naruto said, "I love you, too," before turning off the lights and falling asleep. There's still one more village to visit, but the enemy is getting smarter about our hero's schemes. After waking up and getting dressed, Naruto and his friends bid Gaara farewell and left for Kumo in order to obtain the last bit of assistance needed to subdue Danzo. Speaking of the tyrannical Hokage, he was furious that animals who were Jugo's friends brought him the heads of his spies who had been following Sasuke's group. He then chose to ignore it and return his attention to the current measures. Though Naruto was refocused on his upcoming meeting with the Raikage, he did get a good laugh out of it. Naruto had a secret weapon to win the Raikage over, but he had heard that the man was easily enraged if you said something inappropriate. When he and his group eventually arrived in Kumo, they were met by a few guards. Disguised as Fox, Naruto said, "Hello, I have a request to speak to the Raikage," as the guards were visibly a little alarmed. One of the shinobi questioned, "Do you have harmful intentions to him or Kumo?" Naruto shook his head in response. Naruto responded, "Not at all, though the topic does involve the future of this village," while the guards nodded and gestured for them to follow. On top of the tallest building, they were taken to the Raikage's office. The Raikage was obviously not pleased with the uninvited. The Raikage said in a displeased tone, "What do you want with me?" As Naruto removed his mask and hood, he said, "My name is Naruto Uzumaki. I'm here to tell you that Danzo of Konoha is planning to attack you and the rest of the villages with his root Anbu forces." The Raikage simply laughed at him after he finished, as if it were a trivial matter. The Raikage continued to laugh as Naruto scowled at him. Is that all? That's not a reason to worry. A few Anbu can't take out Kumo, he said. Naruto said, it's not just a few, Raikage easily, there are over 100,000 of them, all waiting to stop you and your village to ash, as Raikage stopped laughing. Raikage asked, even so, how reliable is your info, and how do I know I can trust you? As his guards began to become a bit defensive. Naruto nodded and turned to face Sasuke. I was hoping you would ask that, he said. With a nod in return, Sasuke reached into his pocket, then he produced a kunai and hurled it at the distant wall, and an odd thing occurred. The wall began to bleed when the kunai struck, and then an Anbu uncloaked and collapsed to the ground. Blood was streaming from his head and the kunai was protruding from his mask. The spy caught everyone off guard, with the exception of Naruto and his group. Naruto turned to face the Raikage, who said, well, that definitely proves you weren't lying, so what are you proposing exactly? The Raikage considered this and just now glanced at Hinata. I am gathering forces to help me stop Danzo before he has a chance to ruin the world. I have already gotten the support of Aim and Suna. You are the final piece, as well as some friends I have in Konoha, Naruto said. Raikage asked, who is she? As Naruto turned to face Hinata, who appeared somewhat surprised. My name is, Hinata began, but Naruto interrupted. Naruto responded, her name is Vixen, and she is not important right now, and Hinata appeared taken aback. Raikage caught on to Naruto and shook her head no, saying, I see she just reminds me of a certain clan, the Hyugas. Are you from them? Naruto asked, can we get back on subject now? Because he didn't want Hinata to sign a contract that would keep her in Kumo. The Raikage grinned and said, yes, there is one thing I ask, how about you and me spar a little? Naruto arched an eyebrow. Naruto said, sure thing, but I won't use the Kyuubi's power though, as he removed his jacket to show off his Anbu armwear and a red t-shirt with a black fox skull on the back. Raikage took off his cage hat and robe to show off his muscular body. The Kyuubi? So you are the one my brother taught to control the Kyuubi? I thought I recognized your name, he said. Naruto assumed a fighting stance and said, so B did mention me to you. I'm flattered. Where is he anyway? Naruto laughed a little and Raikage prepared to fight as well. He's downstairs probably working on some new ridiculous rhyme for him to annoy me with, he said. As the others retreated to give the two space, Naruto remarked, I thought it was kind of cool me and him even rhymed together in our free time. The Raikage and Naruto exchanged cold looks before charging at one another. That's your opinion, but enough of that, it's time to fight, not rhyme, he said. The spar wasn't anything like that. Neither of them was hiding anything. The Raikage ducked and punched back after Naruto's initial head-on attack with a spin kick to the chest. The much larger Raikage was confused by Naruto's dodges and use of shadow clones, but the Raikage simply defeated them all before employing his lightning body technique. Naruto was compelled to defend himself. Naruto said, I guess I should expect lightning techniques from the Raikage of Kumo, but I've got a little power boost technique of my own. As he closed his eyes and started to capture energy from the natural world, he was in Sage mode when he opened his eyes. The Raikage continued to use his lightning style. Sage mode? I admit, I wasn't expecting that from you, he said. Naruto said, you'll find I'm full of surprises, as he prepared to engage in combat once more. There was a bit more force in Naruto's blow this time. The Raikage skidded out of his office window after he punched him in the chest. There was a slight impact as he hit the ground. Naruto sprinted and leapt for the window. The Raikage used both forearms to block his axe kick as it came down. Then he attempted to beat Naruto, but his hands grabbed and blocked him. After that, he was flung straight into a house, causing a massive hole in the wall. As Naruto prepared himself, he noticed the Raikage laughing and powering down. Oh man, that was a workout. You've got my support, no doubt, the Raikage said, grinning and shaking hands with Naruto. As the Raikage nodded, Naruto said, I'm glad to hear that. I'll be sending a message of when we'll be meeting up and where. Killer Bee and Naruto's group were running in their direction at the same moment. Are you okay, Naruto? Hinata asked, and Naruto blushed as he nodded and grinned at her. Killer Bee rhymed, well, what do you know, long time no see, Naruto, which caused Naruto to laugh while his brother frowned. Naruto said, right back at Cha, Killer Bee, you seem to be doing well. And Killer Bee gave him a fist bump and nodded his head. Hinata blushed more, and Naruto simply put his arm around her. Yay, but you've got a lovely, caring girlfriend here. The whole time she had a look of fear, Killer Bee rhymed. Yep, I wouldn't have it any other way with her, Naruto said, planting a kiss on her lips. Killer Bee said, hey yo, I feel ya, as they made their way back to the Raikage's office. The Raikage said, I insist you stay in Kumo for the night as a new ally. We will make you feel right at home. And Naruto and his group nodded before heading to their hotel with the Kumo shinobi. Hinata nodded when Naruto said, I think it's time we let our friends in Konoha know where we're gonna be meeting. So now the wheels really begin to turn, Sasuke remarked, while Suigetsu and Naruto both grinned. As Sasuke grinned, Naruto remarked, yeah, the last piece is added now, we bring it all together for the real fight. They gather the last force, they now get their allies together in their house before anybody else does. Danzo was beginning to worry a bit on the appointed date. His Kumo spy had not reported later, his body was brought back by his scouts and his mind was a kunai calmly. Danzo claimed that it was only a setback and that he already knew enough about Kumo to launch an attack on the inside, however, he felt fear. I have to be careful now. As he started to go through all of the collected data, Danzo thought, Kumo might be onto me, but I still have enough power to wipe them all out. Compound Hyuga. With yet another message from Hinata, Neji had summoned his friends to the compound to read it. He waited for everyone to arrive. Greetings to all. Fox has decided that we will meet in the same forest where we first encountered him when you arrive. He will take you back to his camp and go over the strategy with you. Regards, Hinata. Kiba, who had grown weary of waiting for word of departure, said, so, we're finally going to join this guy. Everyone nodded in agreement as Shikamaru said, yes, and everyone is packed I hope. As everyone started to gather their belongings, Sakura said, well, if everyone's ready, head back to your houses and get your bags, we're leaving in 30 minutes. After a few minutes, they all gathered at the gate and started to leave the village, though they acknowledged that they were leaving some close friends and family behind. They were all thrilled to be able to help their village in some way. This was a mission that would help many people, so they could let that depress them now. Lee questioned, do you think it's just going to be his teammates and us against Danzo's forces? Unsure of the Fox's precise plan of attack. Shino said, I don't think so, I think he's going to gather up other forces to aid him, expecting Fox to have more than their own numbers. Choji, who was already eating during the trip, said, yeah, but either way I think we have a shot. Did you see how strong he, Sasuke, and those other guys are? I think we win, army or no army. Sasuke, Sakura said, joining this scheme to re-establish her relationship with him. Neji tried to be reasonable when he said, they're strong, yes, but even the strongest of warriors get tired eventually. Ino said, hey, I think we're here, as she and the other paused and started to survey the area. Kiba, who was once again bored by waiting, said, this is the spot, so, how long got to wait? A voice said, not too long, and they all jumped, braced for battle. When they looked up, Fox, Sasuke, Hinata, and the other three were all in the trees. Watching them, they were all dressed in identical hooded black jackets. Sakura and the other person relaxed. Hinata approached her friends and gave them a warm greeting as Fox and the others leapt down from the trees here. Sakura gave Sasuke a hug while maintaining eye contact. The fact that he smiled at her startled me a little. Fox's words interrupted her train of thought. As they all nodded, Fox said, so, you're all here to join, is that correct? Sakura said, yes, we have all come to help you, and Fox nodded. Good, now that you're all here, I will reveal myself to you. I have already done so with Hinata, Fox said, lowering his mask and drawing back his hood. The expressions on everyone's faces varied, however. They all calmed down and greeted their friend. Sakura gave Naruto a tight hug and expressed her happiness that he was safe. The others asked him how he was, gave him a fist bump, or said it was nice to see him. Naruto gave them his well-known smile and said, it's good to see you guys too. Shikamaru observed Naruto grinning and scratching his head and remarked, I suppose we should have guessed it was you. Who else would Sasuke team up with than you? Shikamaru simply averted his gaze as Naruto said, I guess so, but you didn't figure it out, did ya? Shino asked, so what's the plan for the attack? Naruto nodded and gave him a look. Everyone nodded, and Naruto said, all right, let's go to the campsite and talk about things there. Everyone started to piece things together as Hinata and Naruto walked there. Hinata was made fun of by Ino for having at last found the man of her dreams. Naruto laughed a little, and Hinata blushed a little. Sakura was slowly approaching. Karen was doing the same thing on the other side. When they finally got there, Sasuke lit a fire, and everyone gathered around it as Naruto started to reveal his strategy for defeating Danzo. Everyone was pleased with the plan when he was done and was astounded by the amount of support he had received in such a short period of time. After that, Naruto presented Jugo, Karen, and Suigetsu to everyone. Naruto then declared that everyone could unwind for the day. Everyone started unpacking their belongings and erecting their own tents. Then Sakura stole off. Searching for Sasuke, she discovered him sleeping beneath a tree. Sakura thought, he's sleeping, I should return later, but Sasuke woke up as soon as she turned around. Sakura leapt and spun around as Sasuke asked, Did you want to talk about something? Sakura observed Sasuke shaking his head and responded, well, yes, but if you're napping then I won't disturb you. As he patted the ground next to him, Sasuke said, not at all, sit down. Sakura was starting to feel a little anxious. Well, it's just that, I haven't seen you in a while. I still have feelings for you, she said. Sakura nodded, and Sasuke said, I see, and you felt that way for all this time? Sakura started to cry a little, but Sasuke put his hand under her chin and lifted it. Yes, I just didn't know how to really tell you then you left, and I just felt like I had just failed a mission, Sakura said. Sasuke said, well, let me show you how I've been feeling about you lately, and then he was kissing her. After a moment of surprise, Sakura kissed him back. Karen and Ino, meanwhile, both experienced an odd sensation but decided to disregard it. Friends come together for a shared purpose, and two of them have now shown interest in one another. As friends get closer, the battle gets closer. Danzo had just completed his conquest strategy. After that, he summoned his commanders for one last briefing. All of his commanders nodded when Danzo said, gentlemen, this is the last minute before we march out. You all have a copy of the plan, yes? As Danzo glanced at him, one of the commanders said, Lord Danzo, I wish to talk about something while we have everyone here. Danzo asked, hoping this was just a simple concern on the commander's part, and what might that be? According to the commander, well, the fact that our spy in Kumo was killed and the sightings of Sasuke Uchiha, I just think that two might be related is all, as the other commanders glanced at Danzo and then back at each other. Danzo reassured the commander as he sat down, saying, so what? Kumo still won't be prepared for this assault anyway. As for Sasuke, he usually works alone with his three subordinates, so he won't cause any harm. While Danzo continued his lecture, the commander thought, he says that, but I have a feeling it's all connected to something far bigger. Konoha Street, inquiring as to why Shikamaru and the others hadn't finished any missions in a few days, Kurenai said, so they all just left without telling anyone? Yes, and I have no idea where they took off, Kakashi remarked, glancing at Yamamoto, Might Guy, and Kurenai. Concerned for his students, Yamamoto remarked, it's so odd that they would simply vanish. They might be in danger and we wouldn't even know. Hiyashi Hyuga said, I wouldn't worry about them, while the teachers gave him startled looks. Guy said, you know where they are? And Hiyashi nodded. Everyone's faces were now shocked and worried. Yes, they have gone to join some man calling himself Fox. His plan is to fight against Danzo and his forces, Hiyashi said. Kurenai questioned why they would be so stupid, asking, what? Why in the world would they do such a thing? Hiyashi's words permeated the Jonin. Because this man, Fox, understands that Danzo is about to make this village cross a line that it was not supposed to. Yes, it's very foolish, but he has a plan. I'm sure to stop this, he said. Kakashi and the other Jonin left, deciding to keep this meeting a secret. I hope you're right, because if he leads them into their deaths, this could be very bad for the village, he said. The campground of Naruto. To inform the three villages of the meeting spot and to get there, Naruto dispatched shadow clones. Everyone was honing their skills for the impending battle back at the camp, but also lingered and conversed as though nothing were going to occur. People now tease Naruto and Hinata whenever they're together. Naruto laughed at the playfulness, while Hinata simply flushed. Sakura and Sasuke made the decision to hide their brief kiss until everything was finished. However, that did not preclude them from meeting again later to spend some time alone. Soon hundreds of thousands of the forces from AIM, Suna, and Kumo arrived. Although everyone knew Gaara and Konan, the leaders introduced themselves to the Raikage in a courteous manner when they met with Naruto and his friends. Naruto made the decision to call a meeting to go over the formations plan while everyone was present. As Gaara, Konan, and the Raikage sat around in his tent with a map of the plain where the fight would take place, Naruto declared, all the troops will march with each other. Danzo isn't planning anything special. It looks like me and my friends will be at the front. Naruto didn't say where he would be fighting, so the Raikage asked, where are we going to be? They all nodded when Naruto said, you and Gaara will be wherever you chose, but I need Konan for a special kind of attack. Konan said, and you already took the liberty to explain that to me, so I'm good, while Naruto grinned at her. After exchanging glances, they shook their heads and departed. I think that should about do it. Anything you want to add to it before we pack in for the night? Asked Naruto. Hinata entered the tent as the others departed. She remained at the doorway until Naruto turned to face her and grinned. Hinata asked, so, everything is ready for the fight tomorrow? And Naruto grinned as he approached her. As Hinata put her arms around him, Naruto remarked, yep, all that's left now is the actual battle and the victory that follows it. How do you know we're going to win this at all? How do you know that everything will be alright after this? As Hinata tightened her grip and Naruto simply laid his head on top of hers, he asked. Because you and all of my friends are with me. Naruto felt Hinata warm up, indicating that she was blushing, and he said, that's all the motivation I need to win this whole thing. I love you, Hinata declared while planting a kiss. I also adore you. As Hinata walked away, swaying in her hips, Naruto said, now go on and get some rest. As she was leaving, Hinata glanced over and saw that Sakura and Sasuke were having a tender moment together, which caused her to pause, put a hand to her mouth, and giggle. She then went to her tent to sleep. As the Anbu marched through the streets on their way to the other villages, Danzo was at the rear of the army. Riding comfortably on a horse, everyone remained inside and watched the Anbu marching out of the gate, and not a word was spoken. Some were afraid, while others were simply disappointed by this absurd desire for power. Even so, Danzo's smile said, certain victory. How could such a fool be so overconfident? It was due to his immense force. After his army had successfully left the village, Danzo thought, this will be my finest moment in ages. When they had gone far enough, everyone returned and gazed at the gate with conflicted feelings. The Leaf's shinobi simply stared solemnly, while Kakashi and the other people they had met the day before were all concerned about the fates of their students. Kakashi just stared out the window, thinking, they better get out of this alive, or I'm going to have this fox guy's head. Campsite. Naruto. After a year of preparation and training, the moment had finally arrived. Naruto had woken up and wasted no time in getting ready, putting on his outfit and leaving the tent to find his friends talking among themselves and the soldiers. Hinata looked up to see her lover staring out at them, and she ran up to give him a hug, which he returned. They broke off as the others approached to greet him. Everyone appears to be prepared to leave, but Konan is missing, Sakura remarked, and Naruto nodded. Naruto walked past them to Gaara and the Raikage, saying, it's okay, I sent her to take care of my special form of attack. Gaara spoke as Naruto and his companions joined him at the front of the army. We're all ready to go, and it appears Danzo has begun his movement, he said. The moment has finally arrived as Sasuke and his group joined them at the front. Naruto remarked, I've been waiting a year for this moment. Are we at last prepared to leave? Sasuke smiled at Naruto and said, let's do it, I'm a little impatient right now. Naruto remarked, very well, we're off then, as he heard each soldier cheer and yell as they left. Everyone stayed behind Naruto and his friends as they made their way to the field, but they didn't walk. Instead, they ran toward the plain where they were going to meet Danzo's forces. As they ran, 3 familiar faces appeared. Kankuro and Temari appeared at the front, alongside Gaara, while Killer Bee moved up next to his brother. Naruto saw the plain where the battle would take place, and it was a pleasant, open space. A more ideal battlefield could not be asked for. Sakura remarked, it looks like we arrived before the opposition, as they all surveyed the field and saw that no signs of any forces were present. Everyone simply stood there following Naruto's instructions. I know I wanted us to take in the surroundings and see what we can use to our advantage, he said. Speaking of what we can use, what are you preparing here, and where is Konan? Kiba, who wasn't a big fan of surprises, asked. Naruto remarked, I think that will have to wait, as they all turned to face Anbu, who was approaching. Danzo was alerted to the size of the force by one of his captains. The sight of Sasuke and his teammates, along with the Raikage, Gaara, Naruto's friends, and the enigmatic man, startled Danzo at first. So, you are the thorn in my side for this little disrupt, Danzo shouted to Naruto as he was wearing his disguise. Yes, I am, you stupid old man, Naruto said, meeting Danzo's gaze. Danzo wanted to know the man who had been stupid enough to try to stop him, so he said, may I ask your name since you seem to know mine? Naruto remarked, you can call me Fox, but you will know me soon enough, I promise you that, while everyone else prepared. As he prepared to wave his first wave at them, Danzo said, I see, and I also see that you've even got a little force set up here. Tell me, do you think that it can stop me? No, I know it can stop you, because unlike you, I have chosen my forces that are the best of the best. Everyone here is willing to make sure that peace is kept instead of some old war hawk taking over everything because he never had a chance to rule Hokage. You aren't even worthy of that title, not since I've seen the people who have worn that title, said Naruto, as he now touched a nerve on Danzo. As a significant portion of the force now charged at Naruto's own, Danzo exclaimed, I've had enough of this full furs wave, charge. When Naruto extended his hand, everyone sprang forward. Sakura said, what are you? As Naruto turned to face her. Naruto said, I've got it covered, while Sakura and the other gazed at him. The enemy force was getting closer and closer. Naruto then lifted his sword into the air. Naruto exclaimed, now Konan. as everyone looked up in shock at what they saw. Millions of paper shuriken descended like rain onto Danzo's first wave from the sky. They began to fall one by one, getting sliced and bloody all over the place. Danzo's expression changed to one of annoyance. It became quiet as the final shuriken fell, and then Naruto spoke. Naruto declared, "Now we charge," as he and the others started to charge. Now that the first blow has been delivered, fate is looking on. The conflict had been ongoing for some time. One man after another had been lost on both sides. Naruto's companions were defending themselves and eliminating Anbu one by one. Sakura was punching hard despite having a kunai out. The one in the center turned to his teammates and used a kunai to kill them. Just as she was about to engage a group of 3, Sakura was taken aback by his motivation until he took off his mask. With his typical smile, Sai said, "Hello Sakura, how have you been?" Sakura nodded at Sai and said, "Sai, I should have known you were in Danzo's force helping us out now?" "Yes, Danzo-sama has gone too far this time. I'm going to make sure he doesn't succeed with this plan," Sai stated gravely. Sakura said, "Okay then, you stick with me, I could use some backup," and Sai nodded before they left. At the same time, Sasuke and his team were all eliminating Anbu. Jugo had chosen to use level 2 curse marks, and the Anbu he encountered either fled in fear or was simply destroyed. Karen made the decision to remain with Sasuke because she believed that working with him would increase her chances of success as long as she didn't make an effort to court him or anything. Sasuke didn't mind. Suigetsu decided to ask Sasuke a question because he was growing bored while using the executioner's blade. As Sasuke sliced down another Anbu and turned to face Suigetsu, he said, "Hey Sasuke, this is getting kind of boring. You mind if I shake things up a bit?" Saying, "I told you I don't care if you use it. Stop asking me for permission all the time and just go to work." Sasuke continued to defeat Anbu. Suigetsu grinned and reached for a scroll he had stashed away, saying, "Okay, I'll just get started then, won't I?" Suigetsu placed his hand on one of the 7 seals he had on the scroll. After opening it, the executioner's blade vanished into the scroll, and a sword with spiky blue skin protruding from the top that was otherwise covered in bandages emerged. Suigetsu swung the sword at the Anbu and sliced them to size, exclaiming, "Look, the sword of Kisame Hoshigaki, Samahata." Tenten wanted to look at the sword after this was over, so she asked, "When did he get that sword?" Tenten understood as she watched Suigetsu continue to slay enemies. "During the year we were with Naruto, Suigetsu went out in his free time to look for the 7 swords of the mist. He got Kisame's blade when he died after my attack. He got the others when we found his brother's scroll containing the other 5 of the 7. After that, he just started training with all of them," Sasuke said. Gaara, his siblings, and the rest of the Suna force were causing enough damage in another area of the fight to keep the tide turning in their favor. The same could be said for the Kumo forces, whose Raikage went all out on these poor Anbu. Using his fighting style and lightning technique, the Killer Bee was slicing and dicing the enemy with all of his blades out. Aim was giving their adversary their chakra after using some rain to sap it. In the meantime, Konan was merely utilizing paper bombs infused with her body to eliminate adversaries and gain some distance. When it came to defeating forces, Naruto was having no trouble at all. Each time they believed they had him, he would suddenly kill them by poofing into smoke. One time, though, an enemy actually cut him, slightly injuring him as the Anub charged. He abruptly stopped and collapsed when Hinata emerged behind the man. Her hands were covered in chakra. After leaping at her, Naruto impaled an adversary behind her with a grace and style that had never been seen before. They were now back to back and eliminating all newcomers. Naruto spoke when everything came to a halt. Naruto asked, "Do you think you can handle these guys on your own? I want to see if I can find Danzo and wrap this up," to which Hinata gave their nod. As Naruto nodded and vanished, Hinata remarked, "Yes, in addition to the fact that I feel Neji approaching this way to assist me, go and put an end to that tyrant." Now, Naruto was rushing in Danzo's direction. Seeing him coming, Danzo put his men on the defensive. When Naruto realized this, he made 2 shadow clones, which killed the men. While all of this was going on, Naruto leapt at Danzo, but the elderly war hawk was quick to react and skidded away. He was soon overtaken by Naruto, who gazed at the elderly idiot. "It's just you and me now," Naruto uttered, gripping his sword firmly. Danzo raised his sword in a reed position and said, "All right, but I still want to know your name?" Naruto said, "Very well, I guess the time has come," as he lowered his mask and hood. Danzo said, his eyes as shocked as ever, "It can't be? You really couldn't figure it out? You really deserve to die, right now," Naruto yelled as he charged the man who had put him in jail. In the battle, Naruto was all over Danzo. Danzo was just about hanging on. Naruto was moving too quickly for the elderly despot to keep up with each blow. Naruto was cutting him a little. He was able to breathe at last, knowing that he had this match in the bag. Naruto simply grinned. How on earth did you end up leading Root? While Danzo appeared irritated, Naruto remarked, I haven't even broken a sweat fighting you. As he removed the bandages from his eye, Danzo remarked, you little brat, I guess I'll have to use my little secret to beat you. A Sharingan was exposed beneath, and Danzo grinned when he saw it. After a moment of surprise, Naruto simply grinned. Is that all? You old fool, are you forgetting that I've been training with Uchiha for the past year? Danzo merely grinned at Naruto's comment. Danzo returned to his fighting stance and remarked, that may be the case, but at least I can have a chance to kill you like I should have done oh so long ago. Yes, you ought to have, but you chose not to. You will now pay for it, Naruto yelled as he charged at Danzo once more. On the battlefield, Naruto's unified allies had decisively defeated Danzo's forces. The remaining members of Naruto's group were preparing to put an end to this at last. The Anbu realized they had lost all chance of victory. As everyone turned and began to run, one Anbu yelled, this is a lost cause, let's get out of here. Uncertain of what to do at this point, Hinata asked, should we let them escape? When the Anbu forces ceased operations, the solution was revealed. The reason was that a massive Konoha Jonin force was in front of them on the opposite side of the field. The enormous force was led by none other than Kakashi Hatake. The Anbu were all perplexed as he stood at the forefront of the force. What are you doing? One Anbu, furious that they had been duped, remarked, you promised Danzo that you would not participate in this takeover. Yes, we did, but that was before we realized how involved our Konoha-based students were in this. Thus, our small agreement is essentially nullified, and we can assist in kicking your face in, Kakashi stated as the other Jonin prepared to attack the Anbu. Sasuke and the rest of Naruto's force were bumped into as the Anbu began to retreat. Now might be a good time to beg for your life, Sasuke said, grinning malevolently while gripping his sword. The Anbu and the rest of the force dropped their weapons and dropped to their knees, raising their hands in the air. All right, we give up, he said. That's what I like to hear, Sasuke remarked as the Anbu was restrained by the ninja from each village. Sasuke. As the other teachers approached to welcome their students, Kakashi remarked, this fox guy must be pretty powerful to have you on his force. Yay, he's something all right, Sakura said, smiling at Kakashi as she approached Sasuke. Where is he now? While searching for someone who might be Fox, Kakashi remarked, I don't see him with your force. Funny you should ask, he's right over there fighting Danzo, Sasuke said, gesturing to their location, leaving Kakashi speechless. Is Naruto Fox? While Sasuke and Sakura were wearing anime sweat drops, Kakashi asked, why'd I feel like I should have figured that out? Danzo and Naruto. Danzo was more resilient than before, and Naruto had to give him credit for it. Naruto's movements were now easier for Danzo to read to maintain an advantage over the old fart. Naruto had to switch to Sage mode now. Danzo found it difficult to keep up with Naruto. They were now catching their breaths and at a standstill once more. I'm still ahead of you, Danzo, even though you had me there for a while. Danzo was upset with this boy, but Naruto retorted, I won't stop until you stop breathing. This is unbelievable. In fact, I will have to use my secret weapon against you. As he removed the bandages from his arm and revealed something that completely shocked Naruto, Danzo said, oh well, I had hoped I could reveal this when the invasion actually began, but I guess this will do just fine. Danzo had several Sharingans on his arm. They were all in stage 3, and Naruto was able to make a reasonable guess as to their origins. If the one inside your skull wasn't awful enough, geez, didn't those originate from the Uchiha massacre? When Naruto realized that Sasuke and the others were observing, Sasuke's rage increased. Yes, they did, and I have to admit that they are pretty strong. Why don't I demonstrate their capabilities to you? As he charged at Naruto once more, Danzo said. Naruto slashed Danzo's head off after dodging the sword. When Naruto grinned triumphantly, he saw Danzo vanish into thin air. Naruto thought, a clone, not really much of a trick, but then Danzo abruptly changed back into himself. It's Genjutsu of the Mangekyo Sharingan, not a replacement. I'm sure you've heard of it, Danzo remarked, swinging his sword. Naruto said, yeah, I also know that any damage I take isn't real, but the pain was genuine when Danzo sliced him. Are you not taken aback? With a broad smile, Danzo remarked, I picked up a little technique? Naruto. This method is known as Izanagi. Sasuke remarked, it's a technique that allows the user to remove the boundaries of reality, while Naruto gave him a furious look. So this old fart can now distort reality? Damn it, Naruto said, I can't touch him, and Danzo grinned, but he heard Sasuke. That is untrue. Although the technique is effective, it has a cost, Sasuke said. The user loses the Sharingan they used for Izanagi, while Danzo grunted and Naruto smirked. Well, I suppose I should just apply more pressure. Naruto closed his eyes and said, and I know just how to do it. Suddenly, there was a yellow-orange flame covering Naruto's body. It had 6 around his neck and strange designs on it. What is that? Inquired Danzo, who appeared somewhat alarmed. That is my mastered Kyuubi form. I'm going to fight you now, Naruto declared as he abruptly vanished and then reappeared in front of Danzo, stabbing him. Danzo dimmed and reappeared in the distance. Danzo's 2 eyes were now closed, as Naruto could see. Naruto thought, 2 down, 8 to go, as he charged once more, his sword blazing. From there, the battle was back and forth. Danzo would reappear and attempt to clip Naruto after Naruto struck him. When Naruto was clipped, he would instantly recover. The battle between these 2 superpowers left everyone in awe. To watch these 2 square off, they had halted whatever they were doing. In front of her face, Hinata held her hands in a prayer position. She feared Naruto would be killed because he wouldn't move quickly enough. With a hand on her shoulder, she was startled out of her reverie. Sasuke was smiling reassuringly at her while he held her shoulder after giving it back. Hinata looked back at Naruto. Danzo faded again after Naruto nailed him with a red Rasengan. Danzo had lost 1 eye on his arm and was now panting. It appears that you can employ that trick one final time, which implies that this is essentially over, Naruto grinned. Danzo declared, don't get cocky, your next move could be your last, as he and Naruto charged. Danzo missed his attempt to strike Naruto and was crushed by one of Naruto's chakra arms instead. Then Danzo dimmed and came back. Danzo was angry now. I'm having a great time playing games, you will not kill me, Danzo screamed as he charged and swung again, but Naruto grabbed his arm this time. You old fool, just go ahead and meet your fate in hell, Naruto said, taking Kitsune Ha and stopping Danzo's head from being impaled. This time, Danzo didn't fade while Naruto waited. After dropping him, Naruto released the Kyuubi's chakra and turned to leave with a smile on her face. Hinata began to approach her lover. However, a chain with a cuff on the end suddenly rose and clamped down on Naruto before they could meet. As Naruto attempted to free himself, Hinata halted. As Naruto followed the chain to Danzo, he thought, damn, this cuff is a chakra cuff. Naruto noticed that Danzo had regained 1 eye. Danzo had one final advantage. Danzo made hand gestures and said, now, I'm going to finish you. Naruto was making a valiant effort to break free from the chain and chakra cuff. Danzo was getting ready for a major jutsu move. During this time, with his katana drawn, Naruto attempted, but failed, to cut the chain. I made this cuff and chain out of the strongest metal available, so it's useless. Nearing the end of his hand signs, Danzo grinned broadly and said, and since you can't use chakra, you can't strengthen that blade to cut through it. Hinata began to rush toward Naruto to help him. At that point they were both hurrying to cut him loose as Sasuke had the same idea. Naruto yelled, stay back, as soon as he saw them, but he also noticed that Danzo had completed his hand signals for his last blow. Hinata began, but Naruto-kun you, but Danzo interrupted her as he yelled his attack. Danzo screamed, fire style, solar flare cannon, as Naruto was struck by a massive cylinder of fierce fire. As the massive explosion rushed toward Naruto, scorching the ground as it approached, everyone watched in awe. Naruto was merely staring at the flames. After that, it struck and kept going until it struck a distant mountain. Hinata exclaimed, Naruto-kun, as she watched in horror as the blast gradually subsided. All that remained was some scorched earth. When it was gone, then there was a hand with some burns on the wrist. Still in the cuff. The sight made Sakura's eyes water after seeing what had happened to his friend. Sasuke remained still. Hinata had collapsed to her knees and was sobbing when she heard Danzo laughing at his handiwork. Her sadness turned to anger. The demon ultimately bit the dust. Haha. Danzo continued to laugh and said, oh, this is too perfect, with joy in his voice. This was enough for Hinata. She yelled in rage as she drew chakra, formed a lion's head on her fist, and charged at Danzo. Danzo saw her, sidestepped her blow, and then slashed his sword after avoiding him and attempting to strike him. Hinata was caught and kneed in the stomach. She was kicked in the face after falling to the ground with her stomach clutched. Danzo's sword was at her throat as she fell onto her back. Danzo began to raise his sword and said, I'll be happy to help you if you wish to join your demon lover in hell. I apologize, Naruto-kun, I failed. I couldn't get back at you. Hinata was about to close her eyes and accept her fate when she had this thought. Then she noticed something. Danzo was directly in the path of something that had leapt into the air as it fell. This thing also had a shiny component. Then she noticed that a man was falling. This man was recognizable by his blue eyes, whisker eyes, and blonde hair. Hinata grinned with delight, unable to believe what she saw. When Danzo noticed this, he scowled at her and lifted an eyebrow. When Danzo turned around and saw what she had seen, he became alarmed and asked, "What in the hell are you smiling at?" Naruto's katana was indeed falling directly at him. Danzo was attempting to reconstruct his survival. Then he noticed that Naruto's left hand was gone. Danzo was struck with realization like a ton of bricks. "You severed your hand. It was the only thing left, which is why you survived." When Danzo saw Naruto lower his sword and slit him with a vertical slash that went through him and caused blood to flow out, he said, "I don't believe it." Naruto said, "Believe it," as he put his sword away, and Danzo collapsed, lifeless. Then, grinning, Naruto held out his right hand while glancing down at Hinata. He gave it back after Hinata kissed him right away. When they noticed everyone else rushing in their direction, they split up. Everyone was relieved that he had defeated Danzo and was still alive after giving him a fist bump. Sasuke withdrew his left hand, which was severed. As Naruto accepted it, Sasuke questioned, "What should we do with this?" Naruto said, "I got it covered," and placed it on his left hand stump. The hand and wrist began to reform to the point of total healing, much to the surprise of everyone. Then, to make sure it could work, Naruto moved his hand and wrist. Naruto remarked, "You gotta admit that was pretty cool," as everyone started to perspire like an anime character. At that moment, Kakashi approached him along with the other Jonin. Although they both congratulated him, they were thinking about something else. "So, Naruto, Konoha has no Hokage now that Danzo is dead. Feel like accepting the role?" As Naruto grinned, he asked Kakashi. Kakashi smiled at Naruto as he asked, "Do you really have to ask?" "Well, I suppose that resolves the matter." As all of Naruto's allies cheered in triumph, Yamato said, "Let's go home and celebrate." 5 years later, epilogue, wearing his Hokage hat and grinning, Naruto stood on the roof of the Hokage Tower. As the Hokage, he had accomplished a lot following the fight with Danzo. He had forged alliances with Kumo and Aim with him in charge. Konoha itself was much happier because Sai and Naruto were friends. Sai was given responsibility for Root after getting married to Sakura. Sasuke started to re-establish his clan a few days after the battle. Naruto got married to Hinata. Naruto heard someone approaching while he was deep in thought. As the head of the Hyuga clan since her father's retirement, Hinata, wearing a formal outfit, announced, "Naruto-kun, the council meeting is about to begin." "All right, Hinata, I'll be there. How are you?" As he pulled her into an embrace, he asked Hinata. With a smile, Hinata said, "I'm fine, though a little tired from the paperwork I have," as Naruto gave it back. "Perhaps we could just hang out after this meeting. How is the little one doing?" Naruto placed a hand on her stomach and asked. "He's all right," as Naruto kissed Tsunade and accompanied her on the walk to the meeting. Hinata remarked, "But it'll still be a few months. As long as he is healthy, that is acceptable." As he walked arm in arm with Hinata, Naruto said, "Now, let's finish this meeting."